All right, Mayor, here we are 2 years into your first term. I'm going to give you some categories. I just want you to give me a self grade and then a reason behind.
So the letter grade?
Grade, a letter grade.
Hi.
All right.
All right.
So let's start with public safety.
Public safety. B minus.
Okay. Why is that?
I start with crime. Crime is going to fall into three categories. It's increasing, it's the same, or it's decreasing. And I'm measuring that based on coming into office November 28, 2017. So crime is either whatever the numbers were, remain here, increase or decrease. I would give it a B minus because it's decreased. I'm happy to say year to date, literally, I guess the last week of November of 2019 versus where we are last week of November 2018. Crime has decreased, particularly in crimes against persons, double digits in every category. That's homicides, that's felony assaults, that's robberies, and many more crimes. And pretty much all crimes against properties, with the exception of unlawful breaking into vehicles, has decreased in double digits as well. And I mean double digits, minimum 10% or more decrease. Overall, violent crimes has decreased about 14%. That's high. And that is a lot of work. That's not just policing, which I put right square in the middle, but that's also prevention measures as well as re-entry measures as well. And so with Chief Smith and his leadership team, with community support, with different ways of using technology, with really all type of additional efforts we put in to address decreasing crime, I'm happy to say crime has decreased, which is why I give it that letter. Now that doesn't take away the number of victims of crime who would probably give a lower grade because they've been personally victimized by crime. They've lost a loved one to homicide, or they've known someone that's been robbed, or their car's been broken into. And so crime, we haven't stopped all crime, but it's good to know that we've decreased crime, and I think that's important for people to know.
Okay, we'll dig deeper into that. Next category, neighborhood revitalization. It was a big thing that you talked about coming into office and prior to that, even when you announced that you focus on the 99 neighborhoods. Where
Right.
are you with neighborhood revitalization?
No, I'm tough on myself. So that's somewhere between a B and a B minus as well. This is important because this is the main thing that we have had to talk about. It has been the number one priority is neighborhood revitalization. I often talk about, and you have to give me the time to describe this. The average homeowner is a black mother who I met who has a child or grandchild in her home. She walks onto her front porch or in her front yard. There's a dilapidated structure in the lot to the right of her, overgrown lot to the left of her, a sidewalk that's not necessarily walkable as it should be, a street that hasn't been paved in years, a neighborhood park that hasn't had adequate or upgraded playground equipment in years. The street light hasn't worked in quite some time. It's time to come home. They're hungry, but she doesn't live in proximity to healthy food. And she doesn't feel safe for her children or grandchild to play outside. So we've addressed those things. We put millions into a blight removal program to get rid of that dilapidated house to the right of her. We put millions into the weed abatement program. In addition to that, increased the land banking funding to go vertical with single family homes on this empty lot. We've created a 5-year sidewalk plan to address making sure we pave our sidewalks, and we're in the first year of that phase. We put at least, I want to say, 11, 13 million in paving streets over these 2 years. We've engaged in making sure we support neighborhood parks just as much as we support our signature parks. So Wyoming Park, I think I said Wyland Park. In addition to that, One Pratt Park. And we're continuing to upgrade our neighborhood parks. Of course, we've continued the partnership with Alabama Power to increase LED lights in our neighborhoods, as well as LED lights in our parks. We got the Healthy Food Fund, which has allowed us, the council just approved some of that funding for a grocery to remain on the eastern side of town. That's a local grocery. In addition to that, just cut the ribbon literally on a Publix off in 35211 off Lakeshore. And of course, crime has decreased. And so all of that in this hand was the issues of neighborhood revitalization. In this hand, allocating resources to address those issues. We have such a long way to go, but neighborhood revitalization letter grade would be somewhere between a B and a B minus.
Are you still hearing frustration from residents regarding investing in their neighborhoods and addressing those?
Yes, absolutely, and I don't expect that to stop. We inherited a backlog of blight, of unpaved streets, of potholes, and all these issues. You can't get all that done in 2 years. So yes, we're still hearing that, but we're moving at a steady pace with a sense of urgency and a full commitment to address those issues.
Next category, employment, job growth. What is the administration doing and has done to try to address that?
So do I do letter grade first?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's tough. I'm gonna say a C. Now, let me start with the good. Since we've been in office, 3,700 residents who are actually residents in the city limits of Birmingham have become employed. That's actually a significant number. It's a number we're proud of. That's the number we measure. So you have the State Department labor numbers, you have the U.S. Department labor numbers that tells you unemployment is down, but we look at participation rate among who's actually looking for jobs, and then we look most importantly to those within the city limits who have jobs. So 3,700 people over the last 2 years is actually good for our city when compared to how many people we have in the city. From a percentage standpoint, that's actually good, that increase. I'm happy to say you all have heard of Tip Tap Top. You know, we like our acronyms here. But when you use SHIP as an example on the whole notion of incentives to hire local, a portion of that is a tangible example of we've been intentional about not just making sure we increase employment opportunities in the city limits of Birmingham, but we want to make sure that people who live in Birmingham have jobs. I think we all know that the daytime population in the city of Birmingham is at a minimum double what it is at night, but we want to make sure that the people that live here are exposed to those opportunities. So that's the biggest thing we look for. We're happy that the tech scene has continued to increase. We continue in support of the Bound program. I'm always speaking to people about expanding either H2 here or opportunities here or operations here. If we can't necessarily get the big gun, you go for the second piece. That's worked well for us as it relates to opportunities in the city and expanding job opportunities. But there's a long way to go. I'm going to always be hard on job growth. That's why I give that a C. I am happy for the Small Business Council, who's pushed me and held me accountable to making the business license process more efficient, to all type of opportunities of efficiencies as it relates to engaging existing small business owners.
Within this category, some business owners may have been skeptical of you coming into office, not knowing what kind of relationship you would have with them.
Right.
How would you assess your relationship now with the overall business community, from big businesses all the way down to small business? I
would say they're both good. If I think about corporate Birmingham first, my main thing was having a vision, casting a vision for the city that move the quality of life in a better direction. And so for me, in this hand, I'm looking at a city that's always ranked in the top 10 most altruistic cities in America. The philanthropic community, the foundations in this community, the amount of corporate dollars that exist in this community. So my expectations of corporate Birmingham participating in what I call a fair economy or fairer economy, where it's an inclusive economy for more people to participate in opportunities in the city. I expect it to walk hand in hand with corporate Birmingham, and I think they've come to the table. It's been the opposite of reluctant. They've actually had an open hand, not a closed fist. It's been warm. Part of that has been, though, over communication with corporate Birmingham. And I'm proud to say there's a great, tangible working relationship with the CEO community in the city. But I'm most proud of my relationship with small business owners, who I'm intentional about touting what their success stories weekly, popping into small businesses unannounced. I'm engaging and listening to them more than talking. You can spend a lot of time talking, but just like residents, you need to listen to your small business owners. And so some of the issues they've had with the business license process, with the permitting process, just engaging City Hall, period. Every single day, every month in these 2 years, we've tried to knock down their barriers, because we need to realize this is a two-way relationship. For any city to be successful, you want small businesses to thrive. But at the same time, for a city to be successful, we're dependent on those business licenses, those occupational taxes, those sales taxes. So it's important that we create an ecosystem that really supports honing in on whatever our small business owners need. So it's good.
This next category is one of your favorites, education. Specifically your relationship with the school board,
right,
relationship with the superintendent, and then obviously Birmingham Promise.
Letter grade, if the letter grade is based on relationships, it's probably one of the best relationships I have. So the relationship I have with the superintendent would be an A. That's intentional. It doesn't matter if the mayor is not in control of the school system. If you don't walk hand in hand with your superintendent, your city can't move. So we shouldn't kid ourselves in thinking I can just look the other way just because I'm not in control. It is important. For her and I, we meet regularly. We talk about her issues. I put myself in a position to say, how can I be of assistance? And then try to help her move the needle. She has a board that holds her accountable. My expectations is they'll allow her to actually lead and to support some innovation. Nothing's going to change until we as adults change. And I'm not going to put any blame on where the school system is on our students, our children. My expectation is for adults, we need to change. I think the school board and the superintendent should be looking at ways to increase the amount of time spent in the day and the amount of days in the school year. But I like the relationship I have with her, the superintendent, and I like the relationship with the school board. I will tell you that Birmingham Promise is all about a couple things. One, it is an intentional down payment and investment in the city's future workforce, but it's also in support of our young people and their dreams that they have and what they want to do in life. And I've told people this is no secret. For the last 5 years, I've had the chance to stand on the stage, shake every graduate hand. Every now and then there's a bottleneck on that stage. It affords me the opportunity to talk to a young person and simply say, what are you doing next? By the second year of doing that, I realized that young people should only be exercising one of three options, either college, military, or workforce. That's in no particular order. There's a fourth option out here about starting a business, but those main three, the Birmingham Promise supports two of those, workforce, college. And corporate Birmingham is in, and they support this. The school system in, our foundations are in, United Way is in. This is all about adults finding a unique way to all come together to say, this is what we're prepared to do to support our future workforce and our children's future.
Specific to Promise, when are you going to be able to say how it's actually going to be funded and what the budget will be for the next couple of years?
Look to hear that information this first quarter of 2020. I'm excited about it. Yeah, there's a lot of groundwork that's been laid during this fall and these last probably 4 or 5 months. So,
last
excited.
category is what I'll call efficiency, and that includes your promise to trim the budget for the office of the mayor, efficiency in hiring and trimming a lot of the workforce that is the public workforce,
right,
operations, various departments. Some of that goes to street paving, etc. But just how do you rate your first 2 years in terms of accomplishing a more efficient, transparent administration?
That's a really good question. So I think I need to talk first before I actually give a letter grade. We came in with these core values, very intentional about these core values of customer service, efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. You have these 5 core values. Can you hit them all at the same time with the same frequency, the same sense of urgency? The truth is no, but you can take a couple of them and really, really drive. In this first year, we drove customer service and transparency. That it didn't matter what the issue was, over-communicated through transparency and share the information. There have been some things that we couldn't share from a legal standpoint, but if we can share it, share it. I used the example of from transparency. I like to use the example of my travel. I don't have to put the media in a position to request because we're going to share every 30 days, not only where I've been, but how much the plane ticket costs, how much the hotel costs. Things like that, how you spend tax dollars are extremely important. And it's refreshing when it doesn't have to necessarily come out from you all, the media. I think it's important to voluntarily share it. In any forms or examples like that of transparency, we continue to do. Customer service. I tell my team all the time, hey, you have to respond to people, whether it's text, email, or phone call, within 24 hours. Even if it's no, you have to say no. But don't leave people hanging. And be sure how we interact with residents, small business owners. Whatever your expectation is, if you're on the receiving end and you call somebody, have that as employees. So we push customer service really hard. That leaves, actually leaves 3 of those core values. Efficiency and effectiveness, how we drive operations. A lot of that sits with Kevin Moore, my chief of operations, and Chief Cedric Sparks, my chief of staff. I'm proud of the work they've done. I'm proud of the team we built as far as department heads. It took us 10 months to build this team. So, efficiency and effectiveness that first year was nowhere near where we wanted it to be. And the second year I feel better, but we still have a long way to go. But I put that somewhere in the middle. If there's an A and a B and a D and an F, maybe that's a C plus B minus. I'm hard on myself. We have a long way to go as far as being efficient. Remember though, how inefficient it was and what we inherited. If it took you 10 months to build a team, and we've only been here 24 months, we're just now getting to the point where we can get into the groove or making sure we hold ourselves accountable, which is the last core value of how efficient and effective we are in driving operations to deliver better services for our residents. So,
speaking of getting in the groove, will you be running for mayor in 2021?
Absolutely.
Why are you running for mayor again?
Well, 1, I just got here. 2, I actually like serving the residents of the City of Birmingham. You see this book right here. It's a book called Leadership in Turbulent Times by Doris Kearns Goodwin. It's my latest read, but it's speaking about 4 presidents, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and Lyndon Baines Johnson. And it's interesting because it's talking about, transformational leadership. It's talking about crisis leadership, and visionary leadership, and it's talking about something else too. But when you delve into it, it speaks to a lot of what happened before these gentlemen became president. Then it speaks to a hard time they had and how they dealt with that leadership crisis in the moment, and how their leadership style conformed to moving America. In my position as mayor of Birmingham, I inherited so many things that were not working in the best interest of our residents. An efficient government, an effective government, a government that wasn't transparent, where as elected officials, people weren't holding themselves accountable, and no one was driving customer service. I told you all it took 10 months, which is almost a year, to build a team, and we're just completed our 2nd year. By the time you get in your 3rd year, it's time to run for office again. We literally just got here. But let me answer the question. I'm running because there's work to be done. I actually want to close the gap on continued decreasing crime. I want to close the gap on the number of people that are employed. I actually want to tackle and keep coming up with innovative ways to address education, even if I'm not in control. How do I make it work for our children? I want to continue to support small businesses and make sure they're successful. I want to see the Birmingham Promise funding be raised to make sure all of our children, if they choose to want to go to college, can. There's some work to be done. How about these 26 small business districts? In 2 years, we've only focused on one, which is downtown Inslee. There are 25 more to go. You can't do that all necessarily in 2 or 4 years. And so I think the street turn for the conversation that the three of us are having right now is called receipts. In 2 years, we would have wanted to be in a position to show our receipts on this is what we campaigned on. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we're actively working on. This is what we have not had a chance to address yet. I want everybody to realize that everything's going to fall in one of those 3 categories. It's either accomplished, working on, or haven't started. And so running for a second term allows us to make sure that 3rd category, we can complete those things. Because as I tell people, government is the opposite of fast food. In no way, shape, or form you pull through a drive-through, you say what you want, you get to the second window, and it's just like that. Everything's a process. Everything have to go through the legal department. Things are contingent upon a budget. But think about this, y'all. The best example I like to give is I came into office and the city had a backlog of $50 million worth of street paving, $378 million liability pension gap. These are things you can't necessarily fix in 2 years. You need time to address. So in that regards, absolutely I'll be seeking re-election because there's work to be done on behalf of the people and you want to complete the work. More work to be done.
So,
go ahead.
yeah, this is the last 2021 question, sorry. So why should voters elect you again since you've just gotten started?
A couple reasons. One, if I go back and I listen to what the voters told me when I was a candidate for that year, they felt neglected and abandoned. They felt ignored. They felt that this whole notion of a tale of 2 cities, that they were not participating in the growth. Why has this blighted structure been here so long? Why has this lot looked like this so long? Why hasn't my street been paved with that pothole been recovered? Why hasn't anybody addressed my neighborhood park? Why hasn't crime decreased? Why was it increasing all these years? I want people to re-elect me for 2 reasons. One is because we've addressed a lot of that. So 99 neighborhoods is very large, right? You can't address all of that in a short window. And so I want the person to vote for me again because what I committed to in that campaign, I said I was going to tear down that blighted structure. I said I was going to make sure we do something with that empty lot. I said we were going to pave that street. For those people, and that's a lot of residents, that's been accomplished. But for a lot of other residents, we haven't gotten to them yet because it was so much blight. It was so many unpaved streets. It was so many overgrown lots. We're coming to them, and I just want them to know that we'll get to them as well. And so for the resident who I campaigned on and that promise has been fulfilled, there's more work to do on your behalf. For the resident that's still waiting, I want them to know I'm coming and we're going to accomplish on your block, on your street, in your neighborhood as well to address. Same goes for the small business owners in the city. There's work to be done. Same goes for our employees as far as making this place where they want to work, where we take care of their pension. We're going to continue to address all these issues. Everything we campaigned on, we will fulfill. Even if I haven't accomplished it in the short 2 years, I still have 2 years remaining in this term to accomplish it. It'll be done.
Think about the first time we sat down and you announced that you were going to run. What did that young man not know that you wish he had known based on what you've learned over the last few years?
That was 3 years ago. Gosh. Couple things. One is really defining and level setting expectations and then over communicating those. So a lot of people says, well, you've been here 100 days. I thought it was going to get done. You've been here 6 months. Thought it was going to get done. You've been here a year. You haven't done anything. Again, government doesn't work that fast, especially when you inherited some of the things we inherited. So I wish I would have known the depth of the issues and how overwhelming they were, and then being in a position to tell people this will take some time to come out of. I wish I would have known how long it was going to take to build a team. Now, I knew right ahead some of the core people I built right out the gate during that 7-week transition period. But a 7-week transition period of putting your core leadership team in place versus 10 months of completing the entire build out, that's a very long time. So I wish I would have known that. And then the third thing is, it's going to sound crazy. I'm trying to see how I can explain it. We campaign on fulfilling things for people. I didn't know that was going to provide this overwhelming intangible of hope for everyday citizens in our city. But hope is, because it's an intangible, you don't think you have to manage it, but you do. I wish I would have known how excited people were for me to be in this opportunity, and then to be in a position to make sure that somehow that's managed. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this right, but I wish I would have known those three things.
Right. So, having learned that over this period of time, what's been the lowest point for you?
I've had three low points. They all deal with our most precious commodity, which is our youth. I'll never forget receiving a call about Cortland being shot and in a high school and not making it to the hospital. Very extreme low point for me. I'll never forget the call I received. I had a 4-year-old girl just happened to be walking down the steps to a refrigerator to get something to drink, and a bullet enters her home. That's a safe space, and enters her skull, and she doesn't make it. That's an extreme low point. And then I would definitely say, when you're sitting with a father that's sobbing uncontrollably and a grandmother because their 3-year-old granddaughter has not only been kidnapped but killed, those are extreme low points. When you sit and you pull up to the home of a mother, a son, a daughter, siblings of Sergeant Carter, there's been too much shock value, unfortunately, in lives lost and how some of the lives have been lost in our city. And I'm called upon as mayor to be not just a leader as far as running government, but a healer, a consoler. And our city's had some tough times these 2 years as it relates to not just crime, but the way certain crimes have had an impact, not just on that immediate family, but on our entire community. And those examples I gave, the entire community was looking for some form of expression, and I've tried to channel that expression. Those have been low moments, but some of those moments have also provided some form of understanding the spirit of Birmingham, which overall, some really, really kind, good people in this city and community who want to see the city be better. And actually, the opposite of that would be the people I walk up every day. You get people to walk up every day who want a picture, but I like the people that walk up and say, I'm praying for you. Or, I like the way you lead our city in tough times. That's encouragement. And encouragement comes in all forms, but that's one of the best forms it comes in.
How has your reaction to these low points been different as mayor than the personal ones that you've talked about and shared about, moments of violence in your own family that you personally experienced? How is it different now as mayor?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's different, because I look at my own mother. She's triggered every time one of these things happen. She cries every time something of this nature because she's thinking about her own son, my brother. She's thinking about her own grandson, my nephew. But it puts me in a position where even for my own family, I had to be the rock. And so I try to strike this balance when I engage these immediate family members or our community of being the rock and being strong for our city, but at the same time, being emotionally in tune to the loss and grief that this family is experiencing. Man, it's tough. That room is tough. That call is tough. When you see those tears roll down that mother or father's eyes, there's not a lot to say, but provide comfort in being there, in that hug, in holding their hand, in my position as mayor as it relates to engaging our police department and bringing justice with the capturing of that person that took their loved one, and anything of that nature. All of these things is what I try to do. I remember not only being the rock as it relates to the transition and the burial of my brother, but being a point of contact and dealing with our detectives for my family, and then the trial and this whole emotional process you go through. So I fast forward as mayor, and the position I'm put in is, Chief, I need to know, do your detectives have the resources they need from an investigative standpoint to really drive bringing some form of closure for this family? And that closure would be in the form of an arrest, identifying the person that took their loved one. That's important. I'm not sure I would have had that perspective if I hadn't experienced my own tragedy prior to being mayor. And so, as I think about all the families in this city over the last 2 years who have lost some loved one to gun violence, my heart is with them today as it was the day their loved one was lost, because I know that hole, for me, it's been 7 years and it still feels fresh. I can tell you, whether it's been in the last 3 months, last year or 2 years for these families in Birmingham since I've been mayor, their life has been forever changed. And for some of them, it's not necessarily good. They're struggling. So my heart is with these families.
Two big bets, one that you did not make and one that you did. So we'll start with the first one, World Games. How concerned are you about the execution of the games and what impact that'll have not only on the image of the city, but happening right before the re-election could have an effect on that as well?
I will put it in the category of what I call a comfortable concern. Mm-hmm. So as mayor, you're going to be concerned every day because from an execution standpoint, security standpoint, operations standpoint, logistics standpoint, the fundraising aspect to meet your goals, all of these things, you're going to want daily, weekly, monthly check-ins and checkups on where we are on progress. We can't say 2 years out anymore. We're less than 2 years out. And so, but it's healthy because I am getting the reports and we'll meet the mark. I'm appreciative of the corporate community in Birmingham stepping up on the fundraising end. I'm appreciative of our team members partnering with the World Games Committee to address logistics, operations, and everything that has to be in place. I'll even get a report before the one in November is out in detail in person with the World Games Committee that includes the international partners, where a full briefing and update will be provided. So meeting these marks, we have to drive this. This is not just the intangible of our image and our reputation, but it's the tangible of making sure there's a quality product for these world-class athletes who will be coming from across the entire globe to participate in our city. And we got to make sure it works for them, but we got to make sure it works for the spectators and our residents as well. So the balance there, it's a comfortable concern.
Second bet, which is definitely yours, is the stadium.
Yes.
probably the most visible, tangible bet that you've made here that people can see and walk by. How do you feel about that and its progress?
I feel great about it.
Right.
Look, leadership, you have to make decisions. I like a couple frames, so this is the first frame I'll go with. You have a mayor, you have 9 councilors, you have 5 county commissioners. I forget how many you have in the Jefferson County delegation of the House and the Senate, but I want to say it's at least 18. And then there's a couple other elected official groups I'm missing. Minus 3 city councilors, minus about, I want to say 2 or 3 of those state representatives. Everyone supported this. So if that's over 30 elected officials, my math is correct, over 25 out of 30 plus elected officials supported this. Mayor, council, county commissioners, state representatives, because everybody participated in some funding source to collectively make this happen. We can't be that far off the mark if all these elected officials supported this. So I'd like to start there. People need to remember that this wasn't just a mayor council, that the county commissioners put up $30 million. The state legislators in raising that cap on the rental cars, majority of them voted for this, which has I forgot the actual dollar amount, but it's a significant amount of money. So that's a good place to start, that as elected officials, the super majority of us collectively supported this stadium. It wasn't just me. What I did was push us. I pushed us because this conversation about a stadium literally has been going on before I was born. I'm 38. I was very, very clear when I came into office. I was clearer as a candidate that said the following. I support a stadium. I said this as a candidate. But I also said 2 additional things. I don't think the city should 100% pay for it, which we're not. We're paying for almost 50% of it because it's in our city limits. Second thing, though, is we're not going to talk about it forever, because we've been talking about it for over 40 years. We're either going to do it or not do it. And so this whole notion of, oh, Mr. Mayor, you campaigned on neighborhood revitalization. Yes, I did. But I'm also pragmatic. In the city of Birmingham, to support the neighborhoods, to support growth in these neighborhoods, where does the funding come from? Business license, occupational taxes, sales tax. You have to support tourism. You have to support your convention space. You have to support the rehab and rebuild of Legacy Arena. And yes, that should be anchored by a multi-purpose stadium, and here's why. All of us in this room visit other cities. When we visit Atlanta, we see that their convention space through the Georgia World Congress Center sits right next to their basketball arena, which sits right next to their football stadium. When we travel to Dallas, Arlington, we see that their baseball stadium sits right next to their football stadium, which sits next to hotels and bars and restaurants. And I can give you all these other examples in Nashville and Memphis and New Orleans, where their stadiums sit next to each other. It is appropriate that the city of Birmingham be progressive and not just talk about something for 40 years, but actually meet the mark on it. And in this case, I don't remember people complaining about all the money that was put into Uptown, but that's controlled and operated by the BJCC, but derives a lot of taxes for the city of Birmingham. I am simply completing something that was already started prior to me being mayor, which is important in my position. But in addition to that, I support progress. I need to make this very, very clear. This is not UAB Stadium. This is City of Birmingham, BJCC Community Stadium. UAB happens to be one of the tenants that will play 6 games there. But this will totally change our city from a tourism attraction standpoint. This money wasn't just to support a stadium. It was also to support the rehab and refurb of Legacy Arena, basketball arena, and the BJCC. This is a fundamental positive game changer that's already allowed us to get the Super 7 back. All right? It's going to allow us to be aggressive at getting the SWAC back. It's going to allow us all these opportunities, not just 6 games a year for UAB, not just the Birmingham Bowl, but other things that allow us to attract, and the ripple that it has in neighborhood revitalization. In this hand of resources going into a neighborhood revitalization fund, and in this hand of actual tangible growth in the north side of town where I personally grew up. So I'm excited about it.
Just briefly talk about the land bank and any efforts or plans to, now that you're addressing some of the dilapidated housing and the weed abatement, to transform those into housing or livable spaces.
Yeah, so let me start with, you giving me letter grades. One of the lowest letter grades I would give is to the land bank. I haven't been pleased. But let's be real. The land bank came in, it was never properly funded, it was never properly staffed, and there were still some legislative hurdles. So it wasn't an efficient process. So these are all the things we've attempted to address in the 2 years. Number one thing is to fund it, a minimum of increasing it to $1 million a year. When I came in, it was only given $300,000 a year. I don't know how much you think you can do with $300,000, but probably nothing. And so I'm proud to say we've increased its funding. Second thing we did, which was put some support staff and technical support around Eric Fancher, who's been out here on an island by himself, which is unfair. The third thing we did was start having conversations actually with our legal department and the judges where these cases come before, to say, hey, tell us what these hurdles are so this process can be more efficient. And then 4 is, what's the communication, A through Z, process, plan, steps. If I want a side lot next to me where I've been living for over 20 years, and this lot has been empty for 10, I want to purchase it, what's the process? Make that process efficient, make that process transparent, communicate what that process is. I'm glad to see that we're moving better. We still have a very, very long way to go in knocking down these hurdles of making our land bank more efficient. But this is something definitely on my radar, and here's why. It is not enough just to tear down that blighted structure I talked about over here, because once you do that, the homeowner here is glad, but now all of a sudden, instead of having 1 empty lot next to them, they got 2 they're anchored by 2 empty lots. So in that regards, it's important that we go vertical on these empty lots with single family homes. I'm not against multi-purpose dwellings, but that's what we keep seeing in our city on certain sides of towns. I think what we have to do is have an equal sense of urgency and a concentration on single family homes. And one of the best way to do this is, one of the best tools in the toolbox is making sure you have an efficient land bank.
One of the last questions, I'm working on a story looking at the state, particularly minority and women-owned businesses in the construction area, and doing it now because in the next 3 years, it could be $500 million worth of construction going on in this city.
Right.
Between downtown, private developers, public development, airports, transit authorities, etc. What is this administration doing to ensure that a fair portion of that pie is going to minority and women-owned businesses?
Couple things. One of the things we did was we hired Tanae Dolphin, who had a background in the Obama administration and economic development background, small business development. And she's been a force to be reckoned with as far as engagement, communication, setting the tone, and engaging those and sitting at the table of those who are making the decisions on about who's getting and receiving what. We live in the state of Alabama. You can't do quotas. That's illegal. But what you can do is set a tone to say that the city of Birmingham looks to engage organizations who believe not only in transparency and accountability, but they believe in what we call equity and inclusion. I use the example of, as a child, you sat at the child's table, you weren't allowed to sit at the adult table when you ate. And then there were certain times as a child you couldn't talk when adults were speaking. And that's how I look at equity and inclusion. It is not just the ability to sit at the table, but be able to speak at the table. And that's how I look at minority participation, particularly as it relates to minority owned business for women of color. This city has a long way to go in supporting minority businesses, and even a longer way to go as it relates to those minorities being women. So our administration, we have set ourselves out to say that we want City of Birmingham to be the destination hub for any black woman or any woman of color across America that wants to open her business. And she can be successful here because I've told my entire IEO team we need to, one, create an ecosystem that supports her. Two, the business license process needs to be efficient for her. Three, her ability to be able to leverage capital. What's the City of Birmingham's role in making sure she can gain access to capital to be successful? And then four, putting her in a position, if there's a project, i.e. construction, has she been put in a position to at least equally compete with all the other big boys? The answer is the City of Birmingham has laid out all the things to make that successful for that minority owned business owner, especially a woman of color.
All right, so my last question, I think we're about to have to wrap it up. So, Mayor, in these next 2 years, what are you focusing on? What are your big goals as you finish your first term?
We don't deviate from neighborhood revitalization. We continue with that description of that mother who has a child or grandchild where she lives. That's what we forgot to talk about, the child or grandchild. The focus on the next 2 years is the child or grandchild. So everything that we talked about as far as allocating resources to address the blight removal and the empty lot with the land bank and the paving the streets and the fixing the pothole, making the sidewalk walkable and addressing the neighborhood park and the lights and addressing crime, we continue to do all of those things. We do not deviate. We move with a sense of urgency. But at the same time, the child or grandchild, you focus on the people. What's their future look like? We focus on workforce development. We focus and double, triple down on the Birmingham Promise, making sure those young people have opportunities. But the other thing is, you continue to give Chief Smith the resources he needs to decrease crime. We continue to support and engage neighborhood officers on block watch programs, access to cameras so they can participate in the process, and the opposite of the no snitching campaign. And that's not just policing, again, that's prevention measures and that's reentry measures. And the third thing is extremely important to us. It's a combination of addressing the food deserts, so increasing funding for the Healthy Food Fund. And then, I told y'all, it doesn't matter how many no's we get to, until we get to a yes, we'll continue this whole effort of bringing grocery stores to certain areas of town and then supporting the small business districts to make them more vibrant. So we don't deviate from what we've started the first 2 years. We remain consistent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will
Appreciate it.
still be here.
Absolutely.
One of the things I want to hope to get is what percentage of administration spending has been spent with minority or women-owned businesses? I don't know if you know it or how intentional you are about it.
I don't know it. It is intentional.
Okay.
Look forward to sharing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think actually you're going to like that number.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor.
Look, I didn't need any notes.